Tonight's class is taught by Avery Lewis. To go ahead and skip ahead to that class, check the screen for the time marker at which you can skip ahead to Avery's class. To hear the intro to my channel, a little bit more about my process of teaching, and get connected in different ways, continue listening, and then Avery's class will start right after. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and we look forward to connecting with you. Hi, my name is Kim, and welcome to my channel. You may have found yourself here when you were looking for yoga, Yin Yoga, anxiety relief, relaxation, something to do with Brene Brown that'll help your day feel better, or maybe you somehow stumbled here through a picture of a cute animal, or we know each other offline. However you made it here, welcome, and I'm glad that you're here. If you are joining me for a yoga class, go ahead and find yourself somewhere you can lie on the floor for about an hour to an hour and a half. And yes, I genuinely mean just somewhere you can lie on the floor. Yin Yoga is a practice that can be done on a yoga mat, but can also just be done lying in the middle of your bedroom floor, your living room floor, or wherever you find yourself. We'll be moving through about a dozen or so different poses that might feel like they are simple at first, but the purpose of Yin Yoga is to find a way to use our breath and our self willpower to sit in the same position for 3 to 5 or maybe even 7 minutes. And while that sounds simple at first and maybe not like what anything you ever thought yoga could be is, over time, we work to ride the edge and the waves of sensation. We never want to push ourselves to a sense of pain, and so if you ever find yourself in pain, please move in a way that feels better for you. But we want to ride the waves of sensation so that we can use the ability to take a deeper inhale, to take a longer exhale, to sit with things that feel new or uncomfortable. Because off the mat, or off the floor, or outside of this moment that you find yourself in, there can be a lot of things that are hard to deal with, a lot of things that are hard to sit with, and a lot of things that you are trying to push away or avoid or take a break from. And it's not a problem to take a break. But when we find ourselves unable to take a pause and just be with ourselves for 5 minutes, we maybe need to take more breaks for ourselves. So think of this time, whether you participate in the movement or not, as a time for you to take a break, to take a pause, and just to give back to yourself. You probably spend hours and hours each day giving your time to someone else in the interest of hopefully something you enjoy. But take this time for you to sit, to lie, to be, and to breathe. Thank you, and I'll see you on the mat.
All right. Hello and welcome. Can everybody hear me okay? How about you, Josh? Okay. It's really nice to see this space full of people. Like it's just really sweet to be able to practice in community again. I'm so happy to be here. We have an arrangement of props tonight. So I was hopeful that we might all have blocks, but since we don't, I'm going to try to instruct options for those of us that don't have them. If you don't have a blanket, there's some parts of class that you may want a little extra padding under your knees. So I'll just invite you to kind of fold up your mat a little bit under your knees. So you have a little extra cushion when we get to those parts. Everybody here is vaccinated and we're masked. So hopefully that helps us all feel a little bit safer. If you need to use the restroom at all during class, it's in the hallway, just right where you came in through the door. Please feel free to take care of yourself and get up anytime. There's also a drinking fountain back there if you need some water. I think that's all the housekeeping stuff. My name is Avery and I use she, her pronouns. I've got a bunch of new faces in the room tonight, so it's sweet to have you here. Thanks for being here and trusting me with your practice. When Kim invited me to teach this class with her, we alternate weeks. So Kim teaches every other week and I teach every other week. And we were thinking about kind of what our intention is for coming into a collective movement space together. And as we were thinking about that, we kept landing on all these questions. Maya, this may be a little bit of repeat for you, but some of these questions were like, how the hell are we going to emerge from this year and a half of pandemic reality as whole, healthy people? And how do we respond to some of these, bigger cultural questions of our times? How do we be good ancestors for the generations to come? How do we right all of these injustices? There's all these questions that kept coming up. And as I was sitting with these questions, I realized how dissociated I've been from myself and my body over the last year and a half, and probably much of my life. And I think that's probably not unique to me. I think a lot of us have probably been feeling disconnected from our bodies, and that was a really effective strategy to get through the last year and a half. It was protective, and it helped me personally get through some of the darkest moments of this pandemic so far. So I feel grateful to have had that mechanism. And I also feel that it's not a good place to be long term. And it doesn't help us answer any of these huge questions of our time. So I think that dissociative space is something that we experience as individuals, and it's also something that is happening on a sort of bigger cultural collective level. And that's a really big problem, because all of these systems of oppression that we're reckoning with right now, capitalism, patriarchy, white supremacy, all of these things depend on us being disconnected from our bodies, from each other. They depend on us being dissociated. So when we think about coming together in these movement spaces and being really intentional about being in our bodies, that's actually a really radical act, right? So to actually like inhabit our bodies in a time when all of these systems tell us not to is big. So that was sort of the motivation behind this practice, this coming together again, is how do we get back into our bodies so that we actually can disrupt and dismantle some of these oppressive systems. And, if we're going to bring to life the answers to these questions, we really actually have to do that from an embodied place. So that's the backdrop of the class that you find yourself in tonight. And as we were thinking about what this class could look like, I knew that I wanted to lean on the practices of yoga, because yoga is such a unique tool for becoming embodied, especially when we think about yoga and its sort of philosophical understanding of yoga as a practice of liberation, of freedom from suffering. And when we recognize that our liberation is bound to each other's, that I'm not free until you're free, and you're free, and you're free, and you're free, that then the practice becomes actually a practice of embodied justice. So it's not just self-care and stretching and kind of like moving your body and breathing deep and feeling good. Those are all important, but it's also a radical practice of coming into our bodies and feeling what it means to live with our values and to live into justice. So that's the backdrop of the class. And so I'm thinking about that tonight. I like to remind myself of that every time I come to teach this class, because it helps me kind of hold the container and set the space. So I was holding that in my mind as I'm also thinking about the time of year that we find ourselves in. This weekend is Halloween. If you celebrate Celtic or pagan traditions, it is Samhain time of year. It is Day of the Dead time of year, Dia de los Muertos. It's a time when cultures all over the world recognize that the veil between the living and the dead thins a little bit. And it's a time that we start to celebrate our ancestors and sort of honor those who have passed in our lives. And I think it's a time when we're also invited to think about not only our ancestors or our past loved ones who have died, but it's a time that we look at our own sort of personal ghosts and shadows and darkness. And when I think about that in the context of this class, I think about our cultural shadows our national darkness, our history that we're beginning to reckon with right now. So I'm holding that right now, and it feels heavy to hold that on my own. And I think that's one of the things that makes this class and this space so special, is that these really heavy things can be held by many people so that they're not such a burden for any one individual. So I want to thank you for being here tonight and helping me hold this. I also want to recognize that some of the words I just said are also very heavy and can be triggering. Words like capitalism and white supremacy and patriarchy are violent words. And I notice that when I speak those words, my body has a reaction. I'm feeling my heart beating more quickly right now, and I'm getting a little sweaty, and it's a very real bodily reaction that I have to the violence of those words. And I wonder if any of you might also be experiencing something like that. So I think to start us off tonight, I just want to invite you to close your eyes if that's comfortable. And you can take a hand maybe to your heart or to your belly. And just notice whatever bodily sensations might be there as you digest some of what I just shared. And I notice some of you self-soothing already. I notice some of you are deepening your breath. I notice some of you are rubbing or tapping your heart. I see you taking care. And to me, that's a big piece of what being embodied means, is feeling and then noticing what you felt and then taking care. Yeah, I see some rocking. So it's from this place of tender curiosity that I want to invite you into your practice tonight. While you're sitting here, I'll tell you a little bit about what I have planned for us this evening. We'll be starting the practice on our backs, have some time to just feel into our body, drop into the space, and then we'll move to hands and knees and slowly make our way to some standing postures. And then we'll wind back down to the ground, have a brief meditation, and then some restorative postures to finish out the practice. So that's our roadmap together. And when you feel ready to start, you can start to make your way onto your back. If you do have blocks, it will be helpful to push them up towards the top of your mats. We can use those a little bit later. And as you find yourself on your backs, it might be more comfortable if you bring the bottoms of your feet to the floor and let your knees point up towards the ceiling. You can check in with your low back and see what feels best for you. And it may feel comforting to keep your hands somewhere on your front body, maybe on your belly, or a hand on your heart, a hand on your belly. Eyes can be open or closed. If you haven't already done so, I'll invite you to come into the experience of your breath and just see if you can notice what it feels like as it moves in through your nose and into your lungs. And then you might notice the sort of ripple effect of movement, how your body is moving to accommodate your breath. So your ribs might be expanding, your belly might be expanding. You might feel your mid-back pressing into the floor. It might feel like you can breathe all the way down towards your pelvis or into your low back sacral area. And from this place of easy breath, we'll do a brief body scan. So I'll have you bring your attention down to your feet and just feel for the ground underneath you. You might feel the texture of your socks if you're wearing socks, or you might feel the sticky mat beneath your feet. Might feel good to wiggle the toes and spread them. And then you can let your awareness move up into your ankles and your lower leg. Your knees and your thighs. And then feel for where your thigh bone connects into your pelvis. Notice the back of your pelvis resting against the ground. Feel into your belly, your rib cage, the contents of your rib cage. And feel the weight of your shoulder blades and your arms. And the weight of your skull against the ground. And then I'll invite you to bring your attention to the muscles of your face and see if you can soften around your eyes, relaxing that space between your eyes. Notice if your tongue is stuck to the roof of your mouth and see if you can let it soften down. And all the while keeping that nice, easy breath. Okay, so from here, with your feet on the ground, go ahead and heel toe your feet out so that they're about as wide as your mat. And then lift your arms up overhead and let them fall to the ground behind you. And just take a couple breaths there. Feel into the space between each rib, space under your armpits. And keeping your feet where they are, you can let both of your knees fall to the right. And it might feel good to let your left hip kind of peel away from the ground a little bit so that you're stretching really long between your left fingertips and your left knee. Right, and then on an inhale, you can bring the knees back through center and gently let them fall to the other side. And this time it might feel good to let the right hip peel away from the ground so that you stretch long between right fingertips and right knee. So those are the two basic shapes, and I'll have you just move back and forth between those two at your own pace. And as you're doing this, I invite you to just think about where the movement is being initiated. So does it feel different if you initiate movement from your knees than if you initiate it from your hip socket? There isn't a right way. It's just kind of an interesting thing to play around with. So this might be a really slow movement. You might be taking several breaths to get from one side to the other. or it might be a little bit quicker, more like 1 or 2 breaths per movement. And now that you've made the movement a couple of times on each side, notice if there's a little bit more space. If anything has started to loosen or unwind. If this is feeling pretty good, you're welcome to keep doing this. If you want to move on to the next thing, you can bring your hands back down by your sides and stretch your feet up towards the ceiling. Knees can be bent here. And we're just going to play around with our feet a little bit. So you can start to flex and point the feet. You might do some circles with the ankles. I always have this image of, you know how cats like knead blankets? They kind of like knead with their paws and spread their toes as they sort of massage the couch cushions. Think about doing this with your feet, like you're kind of kneading the air around you. And if it feels good for the backs of the legs, you can stretch your heels up towards the ceiling and then draw your toes down towards your face. Yeah. And then when you feel ready, you can bring your knees in towards your chest and wrap your arms around your legs. And I'll just give you a moment or so here for some free form movement. So if you like to rock side to side, that might feel good. Sometimes it feels nice to place the knees directly over the hips and rock side to side from there, so you really get the low back moving against the ground. You might be making some circular movements. So we're going to be coming to our hands and knees next, and there's a lot of ways that you could get there. If it feels good for you, you can rock and roll a few times along the length of your spine, or it might feel good to just roll over onto one side and then press yourself up. We'll be meeting in that tabletop shape whenever you're ready. Make sure you have enough padding. Okay. So we'll be spending a little bit of time on our hands and knees. You might want to have a blanket underneath you here. Does anybody need a blanket? No? Okay. Okay, so as you come into this tabletop position, you want to spread the knees just a little bit so they're right underneath the hip sockets. Yeah. And then spread your fingers nice and wide. Good. And if it feels comfortable, you can close your eyes for a minute and try to bring your attention sort of internally and see if you can visualize your spine. And then see if you can make the spine a little bit longer. So you're reaching the tailbone back a little bit and the top of your head towards me. Yeah. Good. And then real slow and easy, let's start to inhale as you lift your tailbone towards the ceiling and lift the crown of your head. Yeah, your collarbones will widen, the belly might drop. Good. And then as you exhale, draw the belly in, let your tailbone and your head drop. And we're just going to move back and forth slowly through those two shapes. I've been finding lately that the slower I do this movement, the more impactful it is. Like it gets like a little bit juicier if you just move a little more slowly. And then notice if your body is like wanting to add or do something different, and then follow that desire. So if you're feeling like you might want to make more circular movements with your rib cage, that might feel good, or your head. Or you might look back over one hip at a time, kind of wagging your tail side to side. Okay, so there's an option to keep doing this if this feels good. If you want to play around with something a little bit different, you can widen your knees a bit, almost like you're going to come into child's pose. And then tuck your back toes under. And we're just going to reach the seat back towards your heels. So you're kind of in like a half child's pose, half tabletop, maybe a little bit of broken toe pose there. Just like opening up through the bottoms of the feet. And then we're going to make that same cat-cow movement from here. So as you inhale, the tailbone reaches up, the head reaches up. And then as you exhale, we round. So you can explore same movement with this altered leg shape. Okay, and then our next pose together is downward facing dog. So please take as much time as you need to get there. You can keep doing this if it's feeling good. You might want to remove socks or pat out the tops of your feet. When you feel ready for it, you can tuck the toes under and reach the hips up and back. I'm going to suggest a pretty generous bend in the knees for this first down dog, and let your focus be on really lengthening your torso. So you can think about a bend in the knees as you stretch your sit bones up towards the ceiling. Yeah, beautiful. And then if you're called to find some movement here, it might feel good to kind of pedal out your feet, wag your tail side to side, shake your head yes and no. This can be kind of a fluid down dog. See if you can support yourself through your hands. So really anchoring down through your fingertips and the places where your fingers connect into the palm. Good. Okay, so we're going to find a sort of short flow from this space. So from our down dog, we're going to inhale back to tabletop. And then untuck your toes and exhale into child's pose. Inhale back to tabletop. Tuck your toes and exhale downward facing dog. So that's the basic movement. Inhaling tabletop. Exhaling child's pose. Inhaling tabletop. Exhaling downward facing dog. I'm going to let you take that a few times, moving at your own pace. If it makes more sense to have more than one breath per movement, you can do that. Just flowing between down dog, tabletop, and child's pose. If you forget the order, that's okay. Just keep moving. You might find that as you come to tabletop, it feels good to lift the head and tail and get a little bit of that extension through your spine. Yeah, and then as you sit back into child's pose, you round. The next time that you find yourself in that downward facing dog position, we'll meet up there. So we'll pause there. Okay. So from our down dog, let's lift our heels high away from the ground and let that lift shift your body forward into plank pose. Yeah. So you can make a choice here. If you want to relax a little bit more this evening, you can lower your knees to the ground. If you want a little bit more of a challenge, you can keep the knees lifted. This first plank, I'm going to have us focus on our legs. So think about reaching your inner thighs up towards the ceiling. Good, and then really hugging the muscle to bone. So you're really strengthening the legs and reaching your tailbone back. Awesome. Okay, take an inhale there, and then exhale, downward facing dog. Good, rest if you need to. Take a big breath in. Exhale all the way. Good. Inhale, lift your heels, shift forward, plank pose. Feel into the strength of your legs. Draw your low belly in towards your spine. And then lift your heart up through your shoulder blades. Good. Take an inhale there. Exhale, downward facing dog. Good. Big breath in. Full breath out. One last time. Inhale, lifts the heels, shifts forward, plank pose. Feel your strong legs. Feel your belly drawing in, your heart reaching up through the upper back, crown of the head reaching forward. Relax your jaw. Take an inhale. Exhale, downward facing dog. Beautiful. Okay, inhale, lift your heels, shift forward, plank pose. This time as you exhale, lower all the way to your belly. Okay, so we're gonna take kind of a wide cobra here. I'll have you bring your hands out so they're a little bit wider than your mat. And then you can rise up onto your fingertips like you have little spider hands. Good. And then take your attention to your legs. Press down through the tops of your feet. And then reach your tailbone back towards the back of the room. Because you've got some strong engaged legs. And then from there, we're gonna lift the face, the throat, and the heart. Shoulder blades draw towards each other. And then exhale, release heart, throat, and face. We'll do that a few times. Inhale, lifts face, throat, heart. Exhale, lowers heart, throat, and face. And do that one more time on your own. Okay, and then you can relax your hands, take them back down under your shoulders. Draw your low belly in, and then press back to the tabletop. And tuck the toes under, reach your hips up and back, downward facing dog. Okay, so from our down dog, let's take a bend in the knees and look forward between our hands. And then walk your feet forward to a standing forward fold. And we'll let this first forward fold be like really gentle. So take a big bend in the knees, ragdoll upper body, whole upper body hangs heavy. You can let your arms just be like dead weight. They can just hang really, really long, head heavy. Okay. So I'm going to bring these blocks up to you here. So we're going to be doing a few halfway lifts. I think it might be helpful to have blocks under our hands. So if you have blocks, you can bring them underneath your hands. I like to use them on the highest setting. If you don't have blocks, I'm going to have you use your shins. So as you inhale, we're going to press your hands into your shins or into the blocks, and then stretch the top of your head forward. So you're lengthening your spine. And it's kind of like that cobra movement or that cow shape. So you got nice, long, open collarbones, shoulder blades draw down your back. That's our inhale. And as we exhale, we'll fold forward. We'll do that 2 more times together, inhaling halfway lift. And exhaling to fold. Good, a bend in the knees helps keep your back long. Inhale, halfway lift. And exhale, fold. Beautiful. Okay, so from here, we're gonna sit down into a chair pose. So you can let your seat come back. The hip creases are gonna deepen, and then we'll inhale to reach the arms up. Sometimes it doesn't feel comfortable to have the arms all the way up by the ears. So if that's the case, you can hold them out in front of you or take more like a V shape with the hands. Yeah, good. Cool. Good. Feel for your feet against the floor. Feel the strength of your legs. And then as you inhale, push into your legs and lengthen all the way up towards the ceiling. And exhale, let your hands float down. How are we doing? Okay? Yes? Great. Okay, we're gonna take a couple side bends from here. So let's inhale, reach the arms out and up. We're gonna grab the right wrist with the left hand. Inhale to lengthen. And then exhale as you tilt over to the left. Inhale back through center. Switch the grip of your hands. Exhale to the other side. And inhale through center. And exhale, relax your arms by your sides. Good. Okay, so we're going to take a little bend in the knees here, and we're going to find some of that cat-cow shape from standing. So as you inhale, you'll widen your wingspan, widen your chest. And then as you exhale, flip your palms and bring the backs of your hands towards each other. As you round your spine, drop your chin. Good. Inhale as you open. And then exhale, flip the hands and round. And a couple more times like that. Inhale. And exhale. Let's do one more. Inhale. And exhale. And you can come back up to standing, relax your arms. A little bit of orienting here. So you can keep just a soft bend in your knees so that you feel kind of buoyant. And then take your hands to your shoulders. Good. If this doesn't feel comfortable, you can also grab opposite elbows. And we're just going to do a little twisting. And as we twist, I'm going to have you do it slowly at first and just try to take in your surroundings. So we're just kind of orienting to the space. So gently twist one direction. It doesn't matter which way. Notice what's around you. And then come back through center. And the opposite direction. Okay, you might look up towards the ceiling, see what's above you. Go down towards the floor, see what's below you. Notice the distance between you and other people in the room, the distance between you and the walls. Great. Okay, so next time you come back through center, you can stay there, relax your hands. And then we'll inhale, push your feet down, sweep your arms out and up. Exhale, hinge at your hips as you fold forward. Inhale for that supported halfway lift. Use your blocks or your shins. Exhale and fold. Okay, so we're going to step our right foot back. We're coming into a lunge. A couple of options. If you have sensitive knees or it doesn't feel great to be in this kind of position, you might take your back knee down to the ground. This is the one that's injured. Okay, does it feel okay when it's standing? Can you take a little bit wider stance? Can you bring this foot forward? Okay, good, cool. And it might be helpful if you bring this block back a little bit. Yeah, good, okay. Okay, so from here, if you've got blocks, let's take them under your hands. Highest setting would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, so make sure everybody's set up. Perfect. Okay, so let's get real set up here. Let's build from the ground up. So take a look at your front foot and see if you can get the ankle underneath your front knee. So Rebecca, it might mean to, yeah, perfect. Good. Okay, cool. And then bring your attention to that back leg and let it be really strong. So it's behind you, you can't really see it, but it's there. So you make sure it's supporting you. Good. Okay, so we're gonna find that cat-cow shape here. So as we inhale, we'll lift the head. And then as you exhale, push into your front foot and lengthen that leg as you let your hips slide back in space. And then your forehead can drop down towards that front knee. So that's our exhale shape. And we're just gonna move back and forth real slow like that, inhaling as you come forward. And then exhaling as you slide back. Two blocks, I think this will try like that. Does that feel better? Okay. Beautiful. All right, so the next time that you come forward, let's pause there together. And then you'll plant your right hand either on your block or you can take it down to the ground, whatever feels most accessible to you. And as we inhale, we're gonna lift our left arm up towards the ceiling. Okay. And see if you can keep your floating hand alive. So it's not just like hanging out up there, but you've got some like energy moving through the fingers. Very nice long spine. Take an inhale there. Then exhale as you bring your left hand back down to the ground. And we'll step back to plank pose. So you can remove your blocks, take your hands to the ground. And then your choice. If you want to move through a vinyasa here, if that would feel good, feel free to do that. If you want to rest in child's pose, that's also an option. You can move straight back to down dog. Take whatever transition you need. Okay. I see us all resting in different places. I'm going to give us a few breaths to catch ourselves. When you feel ready to move on to the other side, you can come back to downward facing dog. And then with intention, we'll start to walk the feet forward 1 foot at a time as you come to that standing forward fold. Inhale for a halfway lift. Feel free to use your blocks or your shins. And then exhale and fold. Okay, let's take that lunge on the other side. So we're going to step the left foot back this time. Now that you know where we're going, you can get your blocks set up. Building this pose from the ground up, we'll just make sure that your front ankle is underneath the front knee. I feel okay. Good. Remember, you have that back leg there to support you, so bring some life into it. It might feel good to kind of reach the inner thigh of the back leg up towards the ceiling, so there's a little bit of like an inward rotation. Yeah, good. And then we'll find that cat-cow shape here. So inhaling as you lift your head, widen your chest. And then exhale as you push into the front foot, lengthen your front leg, your hips slide back in space. Good. And just easy at your own pace, inhaling as you come forward, exhaling as you move back. Try to let both legs be a part of the process. Right, and then the next time that you come forward, you can pause there. We're coming into that twist next, so you might take your left hand down to the ground if that feels accessible, or maybe you lower the block. And then as we inhale, we'll lift the right arm up towards the ceiling. Let the floating hand be a part of the pose with you, so the fingers feel active. You might imagine pressing that hand into someone else's, so your whole arm comes alive. Yeah. Let's take an inhale there. Then exhale, bring that hand down to the ground. We're going to make our way back to downward facing dog, plank pose, vinyasa, whatever transition you need. Okay. So when you feel ready, we're going to come to a seated position. I like to have some props to support me when I sit. My favorite is to stack a couple of blocks and bring them underneath my sit bones and kind of kneel on them. So that's a comfortable spot for me. You might sit cross-legged, perhaps with a blanket or bolster underneath your sit bones. Try to come to a seated shape where you could feel comfortable for maybe the next 5 to 7 minutes or so. So one of the practices that has helped me so much in the last year and a half is sounding, making sounds with my voice. And it's very soothing to the nervous system. And I know that making sounds with our voices is not always the most comfortable, especially in public spaces, especially around people that we don't know. So I'm going to offer this practice tonight, but if it doesn't resonate with you or you don't feel comfortable participating, that's totally fine. You can just listen. Some of you have done this with me in the past. What we're going to be doing is taking several breaths. We'll be inhaling through the nose, and we'll either be humming or buzzing on the exhale. And as we do this, I'll invite us to place our hands on different parts of our body so that we can feel the way that sound is vibrating or resonating inside of us. So the first place we'll take the hands is to the head. You might interlace the fingers. You might kind of take a hand to the forehead and a hand to the back of the head. So that'll be the first place. The second place will be the chest cavity. So here you might place your fingertips across the collarbones, or you may kind of hug yourself underneath the armpits, or one hand to the front ribs, one hand to the back. And then the third place will be down at the low belly or pelvis. Here I like to kind of cradle my pelvis, one hand at the low belly and one hand at the low back. So those are the three sort of areas of the body we'll be feeling into. And I'll do the first one by myself so you can just listen to see what it sounds like and decide if you want to participate. So I'm going to take my hands to my head. I'm going to exhale out all the air from my lungs. I'm going to inhale through my nose. I'm going to buzz on the exhale. And I'm just feeling for where I feel that vibration in my body. What I've learned from doing this practice is that the lower down I try to feel the vibration, it's easier to feel if you can lower the tone of your voice. You could come into a lower register. Sometimes it can be hard to feel that vibration down at the belly unless you get kind of really low in the sound that you're making. Just a little tip. Want to try it? Everyone's like, maybe. Okay, if you want to play around with it, let's take hands to the head. And we're going to do it 2 breaths for each location. So 2 at the head, 2 at the chest, 2 at the belly. So you might change your hand placement between breaths. So let's start by exhaling out all of the air. Take a breath in, and then hum or buzz. Okay, we'll do one more there. Inhale and exhale. Okay, let's take the hands somewhere along your chest. This is usually the easiest for me to feel. Go ahead and exhale. Inhale through the nose. And sound. Once more here at the chest, you might shift your hand placement. Take an inhale and exhale. Okay, the last placement will be at the belly. I'm going to take one hand to the front of my belly and one hand to the low back. Again, this is easier if you get a little lower in tone. So go ahead and exhale. Take an inhale. Once more, inhale and exhale. You can take your hands to your lap and just let your breath come in easy and out. And just see here if you can feel the echo of that vibration inside your body. We'll be in this seated shape for a couple more minutes. As we sit here, I'll invite you to come back intentionally into the experience of your breath. And see if you can just follow the trail of your breath as it moves in through your nose, down your throat, and into your lungs. And then as you exhale and it moves up through the lungs, throat, and back out the nose. So we're breathing in and down, up and out. And as you sit in this experience of your breath, I will invite you to bring your attention into your back body and see if you can feel yourself breathing into your back body. So you're expanding into the space behind you. And as you are inhabiting your back body, you might be thinking about how we can acknowledge the past, acknowledge your history, our collective history, what has come before. And see if you can sit in that realization through your back body. Then start to bring your attention to your front body, letting your breath fill the front of you. Feeling the rise and fall of your chest and your belly. And as you're inhabiting your front body, you might consider visioning into the future. Thinking about what a just and liberatory future not only looks like, but what it might feel like in your body. And then holding both past and future, bring your attention now to the very center of your body, the core of you, as it runs from your tailbone up through the crown of your head. And sit up tall into that core and feel as you inhabit the center of your body that you are standing in your own dignity. And that you are here in the present, holding both past and future in your heart and in your mind. And we know that in this place of groundedness and in this embodiment of dignity is where we're able to acknowledge history and simultaneously move forward toward justice and liberation. So you can take another few breaths here in this space if that would feel good for you. We're going to start making our way back down onto our backs. As we start to wind down the practice, it might feel good to put more layers on your body. You might put your socks back on, or if you've got a sweater or sweatshirt, that may feel good to layer up. We won't need any more props unless you'd like to have a blanket nearby for our final resting position. We've got a few more things to do together here on our backs first. So as you're finding your back body against the mat, I will invite you to bring the bottoms of your feet to the floor, knees up towards the ceiling. Right, and we're going to have the feet be about hips width distance apart. And we'll just be moving through some kind of slow dynamic bridge positions here. So you can start by taking your hands down by your side. And then as you push into your feet, you'll peel your hips away from the ground and then sweep your arms up towards the ceiling and let them fall back behind you. So that'll be an inhale breath. And then as you exhale, you'll gently lower the hips back to the ground and let your hands come back down towards your sides. Yeah, so that's the exhale. And you can move through that at your own pace. Inhale as you lift hips, lift arms. And then exhale as you let it all settle back down. And it takes a little bit of core strength, but if you can, see if you can slow the exhale down so that you kind of massage your back as you gently lower one vertebra at a time. Yeah. And do that a couple more times at your own pace. And the next time that you find yourself back in that settled, grounded position, you can stay there. And then let's all come to lay on our right side. So coming into kind of a fetal position on your right side. So some of you have done this practice with me before, it might be familiar. We're going to be kind of rolling around on the ground. So if you've got props around you, you might kind of push them out of the way. Okay. And so from here, I'm going to have you extend both of your arms out in front of you like you have long alligator arms. And then bend your knees so they're kind of tucked in towards your chest. Good. Okay, so from here, start to reach the top arm past your bottom arm. So it's going to slide past the bottom arm. The space between your shoulder blades will widen a little bit. Your head might turn down towards the floor. And then we're going to start to trace the top hand in a big half circle around the body. So reaching it along the floor above you. Yep, that's it. And just keep reaching, reaching, reaching. We're going to let this arm open us up into a twist. Get it nice and slow. And then you can keep that trajectory moving so that moving arm can sweep across the top thigh and come back to meet the other hand. Beautiful. Yeah, so that's the movement. I'm going to have you do that at your own pace. It can be real slow and juicy. It might feel good to hang out a little bit in some shape along this trajectory. We'll do this maybe 4 or 5 times on this side. There's no rush. If it feels good to stay open in that twisted shape for a couple breaths, now would be a good time to explore that. And then whenever you feel ready, we'll explore the same movement on the other side. So taking your time, you can start to roll onto your back and then over onto your left side. So coming into that curled up fetal position, we'll take the arms out in front of us, long alligator arms. And start by stretching that top hand past the bottom hand. So you're reaching it towards me. Yeah, feel the space between your shoulder blades widen. And then from there, we'll start to trace the top hand along the floor. Finding that nice, big, juicy circle. Just noticing if this side feels different than the other. Pausing anywhere that feels good. If you do want to spend some time in that open twist, now's a good time to explore that. When you feel like you're pretty even on this side, we'll start to make our way back onto our backs. The next and final posture I have planned for us is Shavasana, or a resting pose. I do want to leave some space if there are other movements that you need. Now's a great time to take those. Might feel good to take a happy baby pose. If there's another twist that would feel good in your body, it's a good time to try that. I see a couple people taking a figure 4 position, stretching through the outer hips. That's a nice option. There's absolutely no rush to get there, but when you are feeling ready to settle in and rest, it might feel nice to slide a bolster, if you have one, underneath your knees. You might layer up with a blanket. I do have one extra bolster. If someone would like one, you can give me a little wave. So let's finish this practice the way we started, with an intentional body scan. We'll take our time with this. So you can first bring your attention down to your toes and see if you can notice all of your toes, from the pinky toes to the big toes. Notice the soles of your feet, the arches of the foot, the heel. Feel for your ankles. You might notice what your socks or your yoga pants feel like against the skin on your ankles. Feel into your lower legs. And then spend a little time with your attention on your knees. If your knees are supported by a bolster, this can be a really nice place to actively soften the muscles around your knees. Let your inner and outer thighs relax. And see if you can intentionally soften your hip creases. Relax through your glutes. Notice your low back and your low belly. Notice what your breath feels like in those spaces. Feel into your navel, your breastbone. And then let your attention fill your whole rib basket and the heart and lungs within it. Feel into your left arm, all the way down to your left fingers. And see if you can notice and relax each finger on the left hand. Let the left wrist be heavy, the left elbow, the left shoulder. And then let your attention move down the right arm to your right hand, noticing and softening each finger on the right hand. Let the right wrist be heavy, the right elbow, and the right shoulder. Let both arms be heavy against the floor. Bring your attention to your neck and throat. It might feel good to swallow once or twice to soften the muscles along your throat. Let your jaw soften, your tongue, allowing for a little bit of space between the top and bottom rows of your teeth. And feel your cheeks relax. And then imagine your eyes widening a little bit and then softening back into their sockets. Notice if you're furrowing your brow and see if you can relax your forehead and the space between your eyes. And let your whole head be heavy against the floor. And we'll take a couple of breaths to really drop into this. So you can go ahead and take an inhale. And as you exhale, feel your front body softening into your back body. And then inhale again. And let your back body relax into the floor. We've got a few more minutes just to enjoy this restful space. You can release all control of your breath. You can start to deepen your breath. And before you make any major movements, I will just remind you of what we practiced together tonight. We started by naming the truth of things and noticing what that felt like in our body. We built resilience through our movements, practicing flexibility of our spine, freeing movement of energy so that messages can travel easily between our brain and our body. We created resonance using our voices to tone our nervous systems. We moved in unison together, recognizing that we do not act in isolation, that we are connected to each other. We practiced being aware of each other. We practiced grounding and sensing, feeling ourselves from all angles into our fullness and into our dignity. And we practiced holding both the past and the future at once in the present. As you sit with those lessons and practices, I will invite you to start making some small movements with your fingers, your toes, perhaps rocking your head from side to side. Might feel nice to reach your arms up overhead and feel the full length of your body from fingers to toes. And we'll start to make our way back to a comfortable seated position. Will probably be easiest on your body if you roll over onto one side and use your arms to press yourself back up to seated. As you come into a seat, I will invite you to bring your hands anywhere that feels meaningful or authentic to you. You might bring them together in prayer or place them at your heart. As we close out the practice, I bow in deep gratitude to the practice of yoga of which I am a guest. I bow to the tribal nations that have stewarded and cared for the land that we practice on and continue to care for it today. And I bow to each of you in gratitude. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, I like to conclude with a couple of breaths together as a community. If you'd like to join me for that, you can start by exhaling all the way. And take an inhale through your nose. And exhale. And we'll do that once more. Inhale. Exhale. Thank you so very much. Okay, have a wonderful evening. We have this space until 9 o'clock, so there's no rush to get out of here. You can move slow. Thank you.